Good morning. Welcome to Evergreen Offline Training. So this is a training that we usually do prior to any upgrades because during the upgrade, of course, Evergreen is taken down. And at that time, any libraries that are open during that period do need to use the offline circulation module. What I will go ahead and tell you is that currently, our plan is to take Evergreen offline after 6 p.m. on Saturday, November 1st, and we do anticipate having the upgrade completely finished well before libraries open on Monday morning. However, those libraries that will be open on Sundays may need to use offline mode in order to conduct any transactions that happen during those Sunday opening hours. And of course, Evergreen could go down at any time for a variety of reasons outside of upgrades. So being prepared to conduct transactions in offline mode is always kind of a good thing because that's going to allow you to continue to offer service to your patrons without interruption because you're already prepared to go into offline mode. So what we talk about today will apply for those libraries that are open prior to the upgrade. While Evergreen is down, but it's also going to apply in any other situation where libraries have to go offline. So whether that's because your local internet is out or because there's an issue with Evergreen itself that may take the website or the servers down. So it's just good to be prepared. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I encourage you as we're going through to put questions in chat and I'll try to address those as we go. We're going to cover a couple of different aspects of online or offline circulation. We're going to really focus on conducting circulation transactions, but then we'll also at the end go through the process of what to do after you've gone back online and how to take those offline transactions and upload them into Evergreen so that they're actually recorded. Because of course what's happening when Evergreen is offline and you're conducting circulation via the offline interface, all that's happening is that Evergreen is sort of creating a record of each potential transaction where it's recording the patron and the item, but it doesn't have a database to check those against, and it doesn't have any way to actually make those transactions official. So really all you're doing is creating a file with these records of transactions. And then once you go back online, you have to upload that file into Evergreen in order to record them um, officially. So we're going to talk about that process as well. So for circulation transactions, the first thing that you need to do is be prepared. So in cases like this where there's an upgrade coming up and we know that we're going to have to be offline for a little while, you have a chance to check for this. But in general, it's just good to make sure that you know which of your circulation stations will be used during any sort of offline situation. So anytime your library needs to go offline, you know which designated computers will be managing those transactions, and those computers are always set up to be ready for offline, which basically just means making sure that those computers have somebody has logged into those computers and has registered workstations and that those workstations have been used. Once a workstation has been registered on a computer and used, then next time you go into that computer in offline mode, that workstation will be recorded. And this is important because when those transactions are uploaded after you go back online, um, the ability for Evergreen to apply the correct circulation policies and things like that are dependent on the workstation where the transactions occurred. And the only way that can be recorded is if that workstation is recognized by offline mode. There's not a whole lot to this process. It's basically just making sure that you know which computers will be used when you go offline and that those computers, somebody has logged into them and registered a workstation prior to being offline at least once. If you have a situation where you've had, updates or something recently that may have cleared your cache, it's important to make sure that you're going into any computer that would be used during offline and registering that workstation again, just in case if there's any chance that it's been removed. That's pretty rare though. And the truth is, since offline circulation is pretty much going to happen at your regular circulation desk locations, these workstations are in use regularly. So for most of you, there's no action that actually needs to be taken. Just make sure that you have sort of um, your circulation department knows which computers to use while offline. That's all. Another thing to keep in mind is that while you're offline, depending on the reason for being offline, and an upgrade would be one reason, um, your users will still be able to authenticate for most of your SIP accounts, meaning like access to e-resources. That should not be interrupted. The one thing that is sort of utilizes a third-party software through Evergreen that will not work when you're offline is self-checkout. So just be aware that whether it's for the upgrade or for any other sort of unexpected period where something goes offline, self-checkout will not work in that case, but patrons should still generally be able to authenticate into e-resources. So the setup, the pre-offline setup is basically about making sure that the workstation has been set. Just a quick reminder of what that means. So a workstation is sort of made up of two parts. The first is the workstation itself, which designates the specific computer where work is being done. And this is how transactions are registered to individual workstations. So if you have Circ1 and Circ2 as two different workstations in circulation, when items are checked out at Circ1, they're listed as being checked out at Circ1. So you can kind of get a report of every transaction that happens on that computer. When you're offline, that computer will have its record of transactions. And when you go to upload those transactions, you'll have to retrieve those transactions from that specific computer. So it's important to know which workstations are where. The second part of a workstation is the working location, and this is where you actually identify which library branch transactions are occurring at. So this is going to refer not to the specific computer, but to the essentially specific building. And this is really important when talking about offline transactions because this is one of the key components of determining circulation policies. So when an item is checked out, the duration for which it's checked out for is set in part by where it's checked out. And that's determined by the working location that's set. So if I go into offline mode, I can tell that my workstation and working location have already been set because I look up here at the top and I see workstation and working location. That is what should happen automatically. And actually what I recommend you do for checking this is prior to going offline, go ahead and log into Evergreen on those circulation computers you're designating for offline transactions and check to make sure that the workstations are properly recorded. And they should be. If you have a workstation listed up here in the top right, you're going to find that that translates into the offline mode. But you can double check this by going to the circulation menu and selecting offline circulation from the bottom of the menu. And this will bump you into the offline interface without actually having to be offline. So this is a good way to check that that setup is ready to go. And all you have to do is make sure that up at the top, your workstation and working location are set. If they're not, but you are showing that you're registered on a workstation when you're online, let us know that that's happening. We can try to figure out what's going on. But that's very rare that wouldn't just come through automatically. Um, any questions about that? As I said, there's not a lot of action you actually need to take. If you've logged in on these circulation computers before you go offline, these workstations are generally just going to show up automatically. The only thing you really need to do is double check that by going into offline mode prior to being pushed offline. And once you get back out of offline, um, so when we have a question in chat about how you get back online. When you're offline due to sort of an external situation, like where Evergreen is down or your internet is down, you'll go back online when Evergreen is back online or your internet's back up. If you have gone offline sort of purposefully by going to the circulation menu, if you're just in this space where you're just checking your workstation, all you have to do is hit the home button and that'll automatically take you back into online Evergreen. However, if for whatever reason, and you shouldn't need to do this, but if for whatever reason, once you're in this view where you still have this session management tab, if you go from here into the checkout tab and you get this warning, and you click proceed, actually with this, as long as you're online, you still have access to your regular home menus. So even from here, when you're truly offline, you can click on this little home icon and it's going to automatically take you back in. The only difference is that you'll have to log in if you had proceeded past the session management tab. So let's actually talk a little bit about those tabs while we're here. Um, so when you're in the offline circulation mode, if you've gone there kind of on purpose while Evergreen and the internet are still up, and this is something that you'll do after the fact when you're uploading transactions, um, you'll see this session management tab. This means that you're still technically online. You have not proceeded fully into offline mode yet. As long as you see the session management tab, you're still technically online. Once you click into any of the other tabs, if you've gone into this sort of on purpose, once you click into any of the other tabs, you'll get a warning letting you know that you're entering offline mode. And once you click that proceed button, now you're officially offline, which means anything that you do from this point forward is only recorded on this computer. So it's something that's not being recorded in Evergreen itself. So just be aware that this is the point where it gets real. If you're pushed into offline mode because of the upgrade or because your internet's out, the session management tab will not show up at all. So if you find that by trying to go to your instance of Evergreen, you're being bumped directly into this page, that means that you are offline. So that, that's will let you know that there's something going on. See, I think there was another question. Yes, so Jessica asked in the chat, if you're booted to offline mode unexpectedly, would the workstation working location be set as long as you were logged into Evergreen before it went down? Yes. And in fact, I think they'll be set even if you hadn't logged in yet that day. They should be set based on whatever was last used on that computer. I have gone into offline mode directly without logging in before and that workstation set, but I can test that really quick. So like if you came in Monday morning and for some reason the upgrade hadn't been completed, we don't expect that to be the case. But if for some reason that happened and you came in Monday morning and the first thing you did was try to log on and you get bumped directly to offline, these workstations should still be there. But we can test it really quickly by going into and Benjamin is confirming that that's the case. So I'll just show you what that looks like when you do that. So yeah, your workstation is something that, like I said earlier, if your cache has been cleared, you may need to reset your workstations. But because the workstation itself is, your browser remembers it. It's in your browser's cache. But if I'm in an incognito window that does not have that memory, and I go directly to offline. So in this case, I have no cache, so it's not remembering it. So this is the only thing you'd have to worry about if you come in and you see that they're blank. But as long as you have logged in prior to your cache being cleared, you should be good, which is just why it's a good idea to sort of know which computers will be used for offline and make sure that you're kind of staying on top of logging into those regularly. Shouldn't be a problem in most libraries because those will be your standard circulation computers anyway. Mary asked what time the upgrade is expected to start. I think we're looking at just after 6 p.m. I don't know the exact time that Mobius is going to essentially push the button, but it won't be till after 6 p.m. So I think we specifically looked to make sure that we weren't going to be overlapping with times that libraries are open, and I believe all of our libraries are closed by that point on Saturday. And Benjamin's saying usually a little later. So this shouldn't be an issue on Saturday. On Sunday, if you're open, this is when you'd need it. Right. So, just sort of a quick overview of what needs to be done before you go offline. We've already sort of covered all these, but I'll do it in a dedicated list. Designate the machines that will be used during offline. And specifically what I would say is limit this to just 1 or 2 per branch. Think about um, what your volume of patrons typically is. And if you feel you really need more than two, that's okay. Take what you need. But um, the fewer computers you use, the less likely it is that stuff will fall through the cracks. So um, the least number that you can feel like you can get away with is probably the way to go. Um, and even if you're not going to be affected by the upgrade offline, um, I would recommend just sort of knowing that for your circulation department is that each branch knows exactly which computers will be your offline computers, and is prepared to only work on those in the event that you've gone offline. Um, Log into each and register the workstation. If these are regular circulation computers that are regularly logging in and registering workstations, you should be good, but it doesn't hurt to double check. And then, of course, part of ensuring that those workstations are saved is conducting. We do recommend that you've conducted at least one checkout on that registered workstation. Um, then you can check to make sure that everything is being saved correctly by navigating to offline mode from the circulation menu and double checking that that workstation and working location are listed and accurate. Um, and then what I would really recommend is that you also, from there, go ahead and navigate into the checkout tab, click that proceed button, and then that's going to take you directly into the true offline interface and bookmark that. For the most part, if we are actually offline, when you try to access Evergreen, you'll be bumped into that page. But if you're in a situation where you know offline is coming and you want to make sure that you can get directly to it, having that bookmarked will just ensure that it works seamlessly. Let's see, we have a question. We're new to NC Cardinal. This is our first upgrade. We're open on Sundays and staff start working at 1. Plan for offline mode. You may not need it. The upgrade could be done by 1 p.m. And basically what you would do is when you come in, go directly to Evergreen. And if it opens up and it looks normal, well, normal, but maybe a little different because it's been upgraded, then you're good to work. If it is still offline, when you go to Evergreen, you'll find that you're bumped into offline mode. Um, so, so yes, it's possible it'll still be offline once you start that 1 p.m. Open time. It could be done by then, but I don't want to guarantee it. So I think you should expect to be offline on Sunday. But if you'll know for sure when you come in, because when you try to go to Evergreen, you'll find that it is um, it either takes you into the regular interface or it takes you offline. And we will post stuff on Basecamp about when the upgrade is done. So if the upgrade completes at 6 a.m. on Sunday, there'll be an announcement. So also keep an eye on that. Now, we do have some libraries that will create specific workstations to be used while offline. And this is something that I'd recommend if each person who goes to the circulation desk logs into their own workstation. So if the workstation is tied to individuals versus just computers, you might want to have one circulation sort of generic offline workstation that you can use when you go offline. Um, I think most libraries probably have a fairly generic circulation workstation rather than tying it to an individual. So if you already do that, if you already have generic workstations that just stay up all the time on your circulation computers, you don't need to do anything else. But if everyone individually logs into their own workstation when they're on the circulation desk, you might want to consider having just a single one to use when offline. And the reason for that is because when you go to upload the transactions, you'll have to do it for each workstation that was utilized on that computer. So if you had 4 different people on the circ desk, all on their own workstations, you're going to have to do 4 separate sets of uploading. And so again, the more likely it is that something falls through the cracks. It also might be a little bit complicated to change workstations. So in general, If you do not already utilize generic circulation workstations, I would recommend setting those up prior to going offline so that you're prepared for that. Any questions about that sort of prep work? Right, well, let's go ahead and conduct some transactions. So the only thing that you'll be doing when you're offline is checking out materials. There are interfaces that allow you to renew and create patrons and things like that. Please don't use those. The only thing we want you to do is check out, because that allows your patrons to continue getting service. Everything else, please wait till you're back online. So don't check materials in or anything like that. When it comes to those returns, if you want to make sure that they're being checked in on the correct date, just set them aside on a cart that is labeled with the date of return. And then once you're back online, you can do a backdated check-in to ensure that they're showing a return date that reflects their actual return. Um, the only thing that we really want you doing when you're offline is checking out materials. That process is fairly straightforward, but it does need to be done correctly each time because you do risk losing transactions if you miss a step. And I will tell you the step that you risk the most with is saving your session. So that's where you really need to make sure that you're never missing that step. So if you are in offline mode, and so I can see there's no session management tab here, so I am truly offline, then the way that you check out is a patron comes up to the desk, you take their card and scan it. You set a due date. Now there are some sort of standard due dates that you can choose from. I think the most common circulation duration in NC Cardinal is 21 days, which is not one of the default options. So for those, you will have to set them manually. But if you have a video policy of 3 days or 7 days, or your regular checkout policy is 14 days or something like that, if one of these offset options works for you, you can use that. Otherwise, you can come up here to the calendar widget and then you can choose the particular due date. And it might be a good idea to, ahead of time, if you're going to be open on Sunday, put a little note on each circulation computer of what the due dates would be, so that people don't have to kind of calculate it themselves. So for example, if I want to do 21 days from today, I'll go ahead and set it to November 11th. And I'll put in my patron barcode, and then I would scan my items. So I can scan as many items as I need. Some libraries may limit the number of items that can be checked out while they're offline. So you're welcome to make those policies if you want to. So I'll check out 1 and then 2 and 3. Prior to checking out, I check this box to print a receipt. This will happen at the end when I've finished conducting the transaction. So I click the checkout button for each individual barcode. And as I do that, they show up in a list over here on the right. When I'm done, then I click this Save Transactions button up here at the top, and that will generate the receipt from that point. It also clears this space. So you want to make sure that you're clicking the Save Transactions button each time. If you don't do that, then those transactions don't actually get saved. It is possible to scan multiple patrons and multiple items before saving transactions. So you can have, a family comes up and you scan one person's card and then check out their items, scan the next person's card and check out their items. And then once you have completed everything for the family save transactions, that's an option. I don't recommend it. I recommend, just for the sake of ensuring that everything is recorded correctly, that you save transactions after every individual patron. Because if something was scanned incorrectly, then that could throw off the entire session. So you click the checkout button and then the save transactions button. Once you've done that, you can have another patron come up and you can scan their items. But the question here becomes, what do you do if a barcode scans incorrectly? Unfortunately, nothing. You need to be very vigilant that things are scanning properly because it's not necessarily going to catch those. So I just typed in fake barcode and Evergreen took it with absolutely no problem. Some libraries can utilize a strict barcode option, but I think you do have to be set up already with a check digit, which not each library has. So if you already have check digit as part of your library setup, then you can check this box and that will stop incorrect scans, but that has to be part of your regular setup. If you're not sure if your library has that, you can reach out to us and we can help you figure that out. So if you do have a situation like this where the check digit doesn't work, you can allow it and it'll still check out, or you can reject it and try again. But mostly it's a matter of you paying attention. So we did have a question. What if we're offline and a patron doesn't have their card? So there is no way to look up a patron when you're offline, unfortunately. There are a couple of options. So Jessica in the chat says that they do manual checkouts in a Word document when Evergreen is down. So that is something that you can continue doing in that situation. So if you're using offline generally, but somebody comes up without their card, you can make a note of that in an Excel spreadsheet or a Word document, and then manually put those transactions in once you're back online. There's no other way you could do it unless, as Benjamin's saying, you could run a report ahead of time of active users and their barcodes, and you could look them up that way. So you could run that report, save it as an Excel file, and then you could go in and search there. That's certainly an option. If you have access to Dev, you could look them up in there. If they have gotten their card recently, I think the last time we synced Dev may have been July or August. So it's fairly up to date. But if they just got their card last week, they're not going to show up in there. But you can also go into Dev and look somebody up and get their barcode. Dev should be available while we're offline. Don't conduct any transactions in there. Those won't be real. They won't be recorded, but you can pull the patron's barcode. So yeah, either the report or going into the development server are two different ways that you could do that. Or if you just want to manually record them, you can do that as well. So figure out what works best for you. And if you do decide to go the report route and you're not sure how to get started with that, you can let us know, or I'll see. Actually, we should have a template for all active users. I can post that in Basecamp so that you know which template to use. If any other libraries have things that they do to kind of deal with this situation, feel free to share them in chat. All right, so we have done 2 transactions now. The second transaction does have this fake barcode that we, didn't catch as it was being put in. And we save these transactions and we move on to our next patron. And we have no idea that incorrect item barcode went through. So that's going to be a surprise for us to deal with later. On the other side of that, if you have a patron who comes up to the desk and it turns out that their card is not actually active, it was deleted, years ago, but they still have it in their wallet, or it just scans incorrectly, your scanner misses a digit or something like that. That's not going to get caught by offline mode, which means that a patron who otherwise would not be able to check out materials could end up slipping through. So this means both a situation where the barcode was incorrect or the patron no longer exists in the database. It could also, for patrons who are blocked or barred, it's not going to catch them. So if a patron is being blocked for whatever reason, offline mode will allow them to check out. So again, this might be a good reason to run that report ahead of time because you can also get a patron's status as to whether or not they're able to circulate items right now. Now, of course, if you do that, and then between the time you run the report and the time that the patron comes in to check materials out, they have done whatever action needs to happen to clear their account, that's not necessarily going to come up in that report. So how you want to handle that needs to be sort of determined internally, but just be aware that offline mode will not stop a patron who is otherwise unable to check out from checking out. So Bonnie asked about using the strict barcode box. If your library has check digit as part of your setup, then yes, but not all libraries do. So you need to find out whether or not you have a check digit on your cards. And if you do, then you should go ahead and use that. But if you don't, then all it's going to do is stop all of your transactions from working. So I don't know off the top of my head which libraries have that. But we can check on it if your library does not have a record of that or is not sure, reach out to us and we can help you figure that out. So now we have a patron who probably shouldn't be able to check out, but we don't have any way of knowing that. So they come up to the desk, we check out their book for them by scanning the barcode. It checks out just fine and we save it and they walk away happy. We will not find out that that didn't work until we're back online, and we'll go through that process in a few minutes. Before we do that, are there any questions about that actual circulation process? Okay, Benjamin is saying that you can tell if your barcode sequence doesn't increment by one number for the final digit. If the last digit jumps all over the place and the sequential digit is the second to last digit, that's an indicator you have a check digit.
So yeah, basically, if you look at your printed barcode labels, if you have like stickers rather than something you for your patron barcodes, if the oh no, we're talking about items here. If you're not getting your barcodes on your books from your vendors, um, if it looks like your barcodes are big long number one, big long number two, big long number three, and the very last digit on your barcodes is increments by one number, then that means you do not have a check digit. But if your barcodes in order are like big long number one, seven, big long number two, five, big long number three, two, so that the actual the one before the end one is the one that goes up by one number, that is an indicator that you may have a check digit within your barcode. So it's basically a check digit is math within the barcode itself that sets a specific last number on the barcode, kind of like an ISBN, um, to tell whether or not that number makes sense, if that's helpful.
So check with your catalogers to see if they've got sheets of barcodes anywhere. And that's probably going to be your easiest way, it sounds like. If there are libraries that are getting their barcodes attached by their vendors, do they have any way of checking, or should they reach out to their vendor
Oh,
maybe?
I mean, you could look in. You could do a report that sort of says, "Show me my largest barcodes," and just look at the sequence of numbers. Um, I mean, we could also look if you send in a ticket and say, "Hey, can you check the most recent barcode numbers that I've issued? Give me a list of the last 25 or something." That generally is an indicative enough that we can see what the pattern of those new numbers that are being used is. So yeah, I would suggest if you're curious, it wouldn't be super hard for us to run a report like that. Um, in general, I think that the check, I mean, the sort of common shared knowledge is that that adds more complication using the strict barcode checkbox. I think the risk of not using it is very low. So it depends on whether that, uh, whether that's worth it to you or not.
Yeah, I think you're probably better off maybe limiting the number of items people can take and paying attention as you're doing your checkouts than trying to use that box. But um, figure out what works in your library. All right, so a couple of things to remember from what we've just gone over. Make sure your working locations are set before you go offline. Check your barcodes as you're checking things out, both patron and item. I know you don't have to sit there and make sure that every number on the barcode matches up with every number that's scanned, but just kind of keep an eye out, know, um, if something comes in with only a few numbers, it was scanned wrong. So just pay attention. And the most important one is to save transactions. Click that save button up at the top. If you're in offline, you do see over here, there's this clear button. Only use that if something was done incorrectly. If you scan a barcode and it was wrong, you can clear it, but don't use that to clear off the transactions that are over here. Once something has been checked out and you want that checkout to actually be registered, just make sure you're saving it. Because if you don't do this part, there will be no record of it. So that is the process of checking out. And as I said, that's all we want you to do. Do not renew or check in or register patron. Even in-house use, I would say, avoid. Um, if you use in-house use for programming and stuff like that, just keep that by hand and put it in manually on Monday morning. Non-catalog types, you can do those when checking out. You would just change this radio button here. You would select the non-catalog type and you would put in the number that somebody has taken. And you would click checkout and you would save. And so that'll register those as well. You can determine if you want to do those or not. It kind of depends on how seriously your library takes the circulation of non-cataloged items. So, but that is possible. Questions about any of this. And we'll move on to talk about uploading and managing these transactions after the fact, but anything about offline circulation. The truth is it's pretty straightforward. No part of it is necessarily difficult. It's just a matter of making sure you're paying attention, which on a busy day at the circulation desk can be hard. So, that's one of the reasons that we schedule this over the weekend and we schedule it on Sunday because, we're hoping to reduce the amount of issues that this causes. But as long as you're saving your transactions and you're being careful about how you're scanning, you'll be fine. Well, let's go ahead and talk about uploading transactions afterwards. And if there are more questions about the actual circulation process as we go, we can always circle back. So managing sessions, this is what you do at the end after you've gone back online. So whether it's because you had a 40-minute internet outage and now you're back online because of that, or you were open on Sunday and the upgrade didn't complete till 5 o'clock that evening. Regardless of when you go back online, how long you were offline, the process afterwards is going to be about the same. There are basically two options when processing the transactions. You can do them on the same workstation where they were conducted, which is generally what I would recommend. Or you can download all of them. So go to each workstation and download the file of those records of transactions. And then you can take all of those files to an alternative workstation and upload them all from there. So you may want to do this, if you have quite a few transactions and it's going to take some time. And so you want your circulation computers to be available for actual circulation transactions. You may want to take those those individual files off to a different location to process. Um, you're not necessarily more likely to lose things if you do it this way, but it's an extra step and an extra complication that you don't need to follow unless it's going to cause a disruption in service that you don't want to have to deal with. So we'll go through the processing on the same workstation first, and then we'll talk about how you can do it on an alternative workstation. And the process is basically 4 steps. You create a session. The session is basically the name um, for this particular offline iteration. So, you might call it Upgrade 2025, or you might just set it by the date. But you would create a session. You upload pending transactions, you process those transactions, and then you get a list of exceptions. And that means things that didn't work. So that could be because the barcodes didn't scan properly. It could be because the item was in a state where it shouldn't have checked out, or it could be because the patron wasn't in a state where they couldn't check out. The most common one you get with that is simply that a patron has expired. So if you get something like that, that's a fairly easy thing to deal with. If you have a situation where the barcodes were not scanned properly, that's a lot harder because you don't necessarily have any way of determining what the barcode should have been. If you have a circulation staff member who has a really, really good memory, you might be able to match it up. But at that point, often the only thing you can do is hope the patron returns it. So let's go through each of these steps. So um, offline is over, we're back online, and we go back into Evergreen. And as we go to sign in, we get this little yellow box letting us know that there are unprocessed transactions. So if you come in Monday morning and you see this box, you know that the first thing you need to do is go process those offline transactions. Um, if you're in a situation where it's sort of an unexpected outage, then as soon as you go back into Evergreen when it's live, this will be the first thing that you see. So you go ahead and sign in as normal. And then you're going to go back to the circulation menu and go to offline circulation. And you see a list of all of the transactions that happened. There's a button over here that says clear transactions. Don't push that button because then you will lose these transactions before they were in any way put into the live environment of Evergreen. So you can take a look at this, just make sure that that it sort of lines up with your expectations. And then you'll come into the offline sessions tab. So you're in the session management tab. And you'll be immediately taken into pending transactions. This is where all of those unprocessed transactions are. And then you go into offline sessions. From here, the first thing you need to do is create a session. And Evergreen will always save any of your previous sessions. So you can kind of look back and see any other sessions that have happened. In this case, most of these are from the migration that this library went through several years ago. And then the others are all from training related to this. So you would create a session and you can name this however you'd like. I do recommend having sort of a standard process that you use for this, just so you can kind of keep track. So we'll call this Upgrade 2025 and we'll click OK, continue. And so what you'll see after you create a session is you'll see the date that it was created. You'll see that there are 0 items in this session and 0 transactions processed. And the date completed will be blank. So the first thing that we need to do is bring all of those transactions that are pending. We need to upload them into this session. To do that, we just click the upload button. I only had 7, so it was really quick. The more you have, the longer that will take. Once it's done, you'll see the number here. You'll actually, if you have a lot and it takes a little while, you'll see that number upload in the upload column increase. Once that's done, and it might even make sense with your pending transactions to see how many there were so that you can make sure that the upload number matches those. But once that's done, you'll come over here and you'll click process. And this will take all of those 7 items that were uploaded and it'll process them. This takes a little longer. You can kind of watch it update in real time. You can, oh, that was really quick. You can refresh the page to see that number increase as it goes. But once this number matches this number, you're done. And at that point, you just scroll down to the bottom of the page to see your exceptions. And I should have had exceptions, so I don't know why I don't. Me. Hmm. All of those fake barcodes should have created an exception down here, and I'm not sure why they're not. Um,
Sometimes you need to refresh.
I've done that a couple times. Maybe I'm just being impatient. It might take a little longer. All right, well, we'll give that a second to catch up. That's the general process. Are there any questions about that process? And so you see, if you go back into pending transactions after you upload, this page will be clear. So you won't see these anymore. Now, we can go ahead and talk about how to handle doing all this on an external workstation. So as I said, you do have two options when it comes to managing those transactions. The first is that you just do them directly on the computer where those transactions took place. The other option is to export them from the computer where they took place and then import them on a different workstation. So Bonnie asked, what if there are transactions that need to be removed? Do you mean if there was something that, for whatever reason, was the patron maybe brought the item back immediately? Can you tell me a little bit more about sort of the circumstances that you're talking about? Oh, if you have transactions that are still sitting there from a previous offline, or the situation you're thinking of is just straight. Okay. So if you do, that's another thing. I didn't even think about this, but it might be worth it prior to going offline to make sure that you have no pending transactions on any of your circulation computers, and clear those first. So you do have this clear transactions button. That would be a time to use it. Prior to going offline, check to make sure to see if there are any pending transactions, and if there are, and they're from, your migration years ago, or they're from a testing, or, they're whatever reason they don't need to be processed, clear those first prior to going offline, because you can't clear individually. Once you have real offline transactions to process, everything in this pending tab will be processed together. You can't pick and choose which ones to process. So just make sure that this is clear prior to going offline. And all you have to do for that is click this clear transactions button. If you do have a situation where you forgot to do that and you have a couple of lingering things that get processed with this current batch, you can go in and manually take care of those if you kind of paid attention to what needed to happen. Um, if they were really old as well, you can go in and probably run a report for those things that I don't know if there's a way to run a report for things that were processed through offline on one date, but the official checkout date is something different. I can play around with that. But yeah,
I
if
think
you if you check. Oh, go ahead.
if you go to your pending transactions right now, you should be able to hit that clear transactions button, and that'll get rid of anything that's already existing there. That might be worth your effort to do, but I think other than that, that's kind of what comes to mind.
Yeah, I should add that to my list of things to do in preparation is make sure you have no pending transactions from previous offline sessions. Um, if you clear something from here that was never processed, then it's like it never happened. So, all right. So if you are exporting to a new workstation, the process, the last part of the process is the same, but prior to that part of the process, you'll need to export the transactions from the original workstation and then import them into the workstation where you'll be processing them. Really quick, I'm just going to do a super quick uh, transaction that I can do this with. So yeah, if you're looking to make sure that you're clear, one of the best things you can do is prior to going offline, when you're signing into those computers, look for this yellow box. And if you see that, then you know you'll need to go into that pending transactions list and clear it. So I'm going back into offline circulation, and now I have um, a transaction that needs to be managed. And if I'm going to do this on a different computer, all I do is I click export transactions. And that's going to save that list. And you can even do this prior to processing on the same computer, just so that you have the record of it, if you wanted to do that. Once I'm done and I go to the computer where I want um, to process these transactions, then I get into offline mode on that computer. I click import transactions. I find the file. So whether I've put that on a thumb drive or I've used Dropbox or I've emailed it to myself or however I've moved that file from the computer where I exported it to the computer where I want to process it. I find that file and so I click import, I find the file, and as soon as I have moved that file in here, it's going to show up in my pending transactions list on the new computer. So basically, prior to doing the regular processing, I just want to export, take that file from whatever computer I exported it to, move it to whatever computer I want to import it, and then import. And if you've ever worked with, you know, the cataloging templates or anything like this, that it's a very similar process. So once this has been imported, then I can go into offline sessions and I can create a session. And I can upload and process in the exact same way I did before. I'm just now in a different workstation. So I upload it and I process it, and it should be done. It will be recorded as having been processed, I believe, on the workstation where it was where the transaction was conducted, regardless of where it's processed. And you can take multiple different workstations, export them all, then import them all, and get your pending list full with each import, and then create a single session for each of them. If you want to, you can also have separate sessions for each workstation, still conducted at an alternative, like third location. Does that make sense? See if, yes, here we go. We've got an exception is showing up. I just wasn't being patient. Um, so the exception list will populate when Evergreen's unable to process one of the transactions that you attempt to process. And basically what you'll get is you'll get a note that sort of explains a little bit about why it didn't come down, why it didn't work out. In this case, it's because this item was already checked out to another user. In that case, there's not really anything you need to do. It will have been removed from during processing, it'll have been removed from the previous patron's circulation records and put on the new patrons. So it should work just as if somebody came up to the desk with an item that had not been checked in properly and checked out. Evergreen will do all of the work to make sure that that's being processed correctly. Sometimes you may get exceptions about patrons being expired or about an item was marked lost previously or something like that. If that's the case, you can click on either the item button or the patron button, and that will take you if you click on the item button, into the item information. So if you have a situation where the item is in a state that it shouldn't have circulated, you can come take a look at it. You can, you know, you can go in and edit it to make it function the way it's supposed to, whatever it is that you need to do to make that circulation possible. If it is the patron, then you can click on patron. It's going to take you into that patron account. So you can see, like I said, one of the most common reasons that you'll get an exception is if a patron has expired. So all you have to do is come into the edit button and change their expiration date. But if you have some other reason, you can make any changes that you need to a patron's account in order to facilitate the checkout. So this is the one I think that was uh, that exception. And so it's showing up here. Basically, I'm just getting information letting me know that that's what was happening. But let's see, 908. Oh, nope, that's not it. So yeah, no, the transaction didn't go through. So basically what I would do in this particular case is I would fix whatever needs to be fixed. And then once that has been taken care of, I take the item barcode as it's recorded here, and I just manually check out. And so I'm getting the alert that I would normally get. I go ahead and check it in, and it checks out in the normal way. Of course, I can use these date options here to change the due date if I need to, do anything to make sure that the transaction matches what it should have been based on the offline circulation. Generally speaking, like when we do migrations and things like that, we really don't come up with too many exceptions. So it's usually not too big a deal. It's just a matter of keeping an eye on things. All right, that I believe brings me to the end of today's training. So are there any questions either about the management part or about the circulation itself, or just sort of general questions about offline mode? All right, well, we do have over a week until this might affect you. So you have plenty of time to play around with it. You can go into Dev and go into offline mode in Dev and practice transactions and practice, um, processing them. If you do have questions between now and November 1st or 2nd, feel free to reach out and we will answer them as they come in. But for the most part, offline mode is pretty straightforward. It just takes a little bit of attention to make sure that everything goes smoothly. But we rarely have issues after the fact. Thank you for being here. I will get the recording posted for those who were unable to join us, and please reach out with any questions.